Hello, everybody.
Hey,
This is another episode of the Love Again podcast. I'm glad to be here with you. I don't know what I stopped. I stopped numbering the episodes only because I couldn't keep up with which number it was from week to week, and it seemed like so exhausting to go back and look and count. So wherever we are, we're here, and I'm glad that we're here. I'm not alone today. I have a very good friend, a new friend that I've met thanks to our mutual friend, Victor George.
hey, Victor.
Yeah, yeah. And so Jody, I don't want to use your full government name.
You know,
I like it, but apparently it caused you some angst.
I don't hate my name. I just when people say it, I don't know. It might have some trauma to it. Maybe I don't know.
Well, I
Maybe
don't want to. This is not. This is a healing place, so we don't want to. We don't want to trigger you.
but
But
this is
Jody,
where I talk it out so I can therapize.
oh, okay. If that's a word, we'll do that. We'll
I'm
see what
kidding.
we'll see what we can do. Jody's here with me, so welcome, Jody. How are you?
Thanks for having me. I'm great. It's Saturday. It's a cloudy day here in Orlando, Florida, so it's kind of gloomy,
Are
but I'm
you
good.
uh, are you a Florida native?
Native in what sense?
Like, were you were you born in Florida?
I was not born in Florida. I
Okay,
was actually born in Jamaica.
which
And
part?
when I was 10,
Hmm.
we migrated to Florida.
Okay,
So technically, I grew up in Florida, in
okay,
South Florida specifically. I didn't
okay.
move to Orlando until 2006. Yeah.
Which part
But
of Jamaica were you born in?
technicalities, I was born in a hospital in Kingston, but we
Okay.
lived in St. Catherine. So I'm a city girl, even in the Jamaica.
Even in the island, the city
But my
girl.
dad, my dad is from the country, and my mom's from the country as well. But our family lived in the rural city parts.
Do you get back to the island?
I have not been back. My family has, but I get cussed at all the time because I haven't been back. You know,
Mhm.
once I secure the mate, then we're gonna take a trip back together.
Okay.
I'm just kidding. I
No,
do
it
take
seems
a
like
trip.
a good reason to go, I suppose.
I mean, it is. I can go with my
Yeah.
friends as well.
I've been to Jamaica before. I think it was absolutely beautiful.
Where did you go?
Ocho Rios.
Oh yeah, that's.
Yeah. Yeah, it was
Did you
awesome.
go to Duns River Falls?
I did not. I actually did not leave the beach.
Hey, I can't even be mad
Had
at
a
that.
great day.
I can't be mad. You know what I'm saying? Like it's beautiful. It's
It, it,
beautiful.
it was absolutely gorgeous. Like it was, I didn't have to leave the beach. They kept bringing me food and something to drink, and
But
just
I it's changed
fine.
so much since I left, and
Hmm.
I only remember what it looked
How
like.
would you know?
I only remember what it looks like when I was younger, but everyone tells me it's
It's
not even the
different.
same. I wouldn't even recognize it. So I would go as a
Mhm.
tourist,
Got you. Got,
basically. You know,
got.
my mom's family, my mom still has a sister there, and my dad's mom just recently passed away. So my grandmother recently passed away, so it would be more of a tourist event.
Got. Thanks.
So
Tell everybody a bit about yourself. I got introduced to you and then got into your work that you do online, to which I had found from the very beginning is absolutely
pickle,
hilarious and adorable. It's all of those.
the adorable part.
It is like
It's little. It's because I'm
no,
short.
it's fine. No, it's just great. It's so tell me, I want you to tell everybody, what you do and what content you produce and how did this all come about?
Well, I obviously am a content creator. I've been doing it for a few years now, and I comedically write and produce. Sometimes I may do something inspirational, or it depends on how I feel, the mood. I don't like to put myself in a box, but I do mostly put out works that are silly or, just very, I don't know if parodic is a word, but parodies or, just something that's very just comedy. It started from my divorce, really. Great way to segue.
I'm here for it. Let's go.
I'm going, it's like I'm going backwards. So I was just at a place in my divorce. It was just a moment where in my mind, I just said, I would love to record these ideas I have. And I just started recording them and doing it. And then it just kept going. And that's really how that started. I didn't do that until after I got divorced. So, that's kind of what I do.
So did you always love comedy? Like were you like a bank teller, and then one day it was like, oh, I want to do like shorts that are funny? Or was your father a comedian? What is like, how does
No one in my family is a comedian by trade. I've always loved watching comedy. Dave Chappelle, I've always watched. Pet Detective.
Jim Carrey.
Love
Okay.
Jim Carrey. I've always loved slapstick comedy. I've always just had the thing where I can sit and watch certain people. You know what I mean? Dave Chappelle has been my favorite recently. I just think he's a comedic genius in his writing. I love him, and so what's funny? I never knew I was funny until I started doing it. And people would say, man, because my ex-husband is funny by nature, by just what he says. So everybody always thought, oh, he's the funny one. And then when I started doing my videos, I didn't know that was in me like that. You know what I mean? It's like when you start venturing out into doing something that, and that kind of, I guess I would have to explain my marriage or who I was when I was married in order to really make that make sense.
Let's go.
All right.
We're here.
So
Yeah.
I didn't know if I could wait on you to
This is what we came for, Okay.
So would you like me to go into my story?
I absolutely would.
So it was a long, long time ago. Out in the West. I'm just kidding. So I got married at 23. I was 23 years old when I got married. We met when I was 20. We dated for 3 years. And while I think that I had gotten married so young that I was still trying to find myself. So while I was married, I was more of a timid personality in comparison to my husband, and it was more of me searching for my purpose. I was not as outspoken as far as expressing how I felt, what I wanted, what I needed. I didn't know. And I think that when I stepped out and started doing just videos as an expression of myself, I started to feel that power for myself or within or what I was capable of, amongst other things, moving out, getting divorced, being by myself, establishing different things. And my story is more of a minority one. I literally stayed with my parents till I got married. I was an adult woman with a full-time job, still living with her parents. I left my parents' home at 23 and went straight to his house. So in hindsight, I feel like I wasn't prepared to be married. I feel like I was too young, but I knew I was ready. I think we just knew that was just what we wanted to do. We just had to be married right then, right now.
Sure.
And then when we got divorced, me moving out by myself
Mhm.
was a big thing.
Mhm.
I'd never lived by myself before. So, and it's funny because we had had a conversation, and when I had told him that I found a place, he was shocked. He just didn't think that that was something that I could do by myself. So, safe to say that after I got divorced, obviously I did find more of my strength. I feel much stronger as a woman, more grounded in the past few years than I have in my entire life. So,
So I'm always I'm very interested in not that we get married, but the reasons that we get married and the reasons why we fall in love. Of course, they differ from person to person, but tell me about how you understood love before marriage. Right? Where did those ideas, that theory, as it were, did it come from your parents? Did it come from church? Did it come from Disney? Like, where did you get your first concepts about love?
probably first Disney.
Mhm.
um, uh, 1 Corinthians 13.
Of course. Of
Am I
course.
still there?
Yeah, you're here.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Can you hear me?
I can't hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, I don't think I can hear you.
You can't hear me.
No,
You can't hear me. Okay.
no, I am.
So let's see if we can fix this.
I think. Can you hear? Can you say something?
Something like what?
Okay. Let me. My phone just kind of knocked it out. Hold on. Let me.
This often happens when you have T-Mobile.
I'm gonna log out and come right back in.
I'll be right here. But this is what happens when you all have T-Mobile and Sprint, as it were. I have the most powerful network in the nation, so I don't have these issues. But that's just me. So isn't this fun? I hope you all are having um, a great weekend. I'm here in DC, and I think it was about 55, 60 degrees today. So I'm not home. I'm not in Chicago anymore. And there, there
Facts.
you are.
Glitchy.
I know. It it's a you got T-Mobile, and so
It's
those things happen. It's
why
fun.
you're right. It is Sprint T-Mobile. Hey, I'm not related. I don't need to take up for them.
I totally get it. I totally get it.
So what I was saying was, I would have to say Disney, 1 Corinthians chapter 13, and
Mhm,
in that order. Well, not in that order. Probably 1 Corinthians 13 first.
mhm,
Um, in hindsight, my father says that he believes that I desired love in some form, that I ran away from home to find it.
mhm,
And I say that to say my parents had a very tumultuous relationship. So I did not see love in that respect, but I
mhm,
wanted it. And it's so funny that I'm a, well, my love language is physical touch and words of affirmation and, different things. I'm a very emotional person, and I do want love, my parents, for as long as I could remember, were never happy together.
mhm,
My dad is remarried and happily married. My mom is not. So I never saw love, but I imagined it. And I think that movies, you see the Hollywood, the happy ending, which, by the way, a lot of those are fake. Whatever, I tried those things that they say to do, and it just doesn't work. Okay, it's not real. It's produced for real. Um, Sometimes I watch movies and I go, Hollywood lied to us.
mhm.
This is not real. No one's gonna find me while I walk down the middle of the street. Okay. No one's gonna just pop up. I'm not gonna sit in a coffee shop and the man of my dreams walk in and we're gonna lock eyes and the music's gonna play and I'm gonna just be like, oh my God, I'm in love. I'm not saying that can't happen, but like now that I'm dating in my 40s, I have to be very realistic. You got to make yourself be known and seen and find, unless someone does come up to you, and that does happen.
Sure. So, okay, I want to talk about that, but I want to stay here for a second. So you never saw love, but you wanted it. What did you imagine love to be?
Slow motion with music playing in the background. I just, that's a great question. I just imagined wisping off and this wisping off in the end with who I love. I don't know if I took a moment to imagine love. I feel like it was just a part of who I was. At the time. I was a kid, I feel, at 20.
Sure.
And, I did not know who I was. So when we were dating, he used to write me letters, and those were very captivating. And he had written me a song, and it was very sweet. It was very romantic. And I'm a romantic at heart. I still am. And I think I feel very deeply. I think that when I found that, it was so different than what I had seen, then I ran to it. So it wasn't that I imagined it. It was when it happened, I embraced it.
How did you know it was love?
This person that was so into me, and we felt the same way about each other, and it was very strong and powerful at the time, and it was what we both wanted. What was your question? Say that again. I'm sorry.
How did you know it was love? Right? When you're young, you are emotional, right? We're all emotional and hormonal, right?
Right.
All of that is working together, sometimes in concert, sometimes against one another. Like it's just it and so it could be a very bewildering time. But if we don't imagine it, then how do we recognize it? Right? If we don't see it.
But you know what? I saw it, but just not in real life. I saw it on TV, or what I thought was love. Sometimes I think we have ideas of love.
Right.
May not be the right idea or the mature idea, but we see ideas of love. Infatuation can be portrayed as love at times. Even gravitating to the wrong thing, I think. Sure. Your heart can love in any aspect. Out of the issues of your heart, your life will flow. You know what I mean? And I think that's why that scripture has stayed with me so long. It was almost like guard your heart, because out of it will flow the issues of life. So if I love the wrong thing, I will gravitate towards that, and my life will go in that direction, because that's where my love lied. So if I love God, that's where my love will lie. If I love in a wrong situation where it's just infatuation or it's toxic, I'm gonna stay there because I love it. You know what I mean? It's where my heart is, and that's where my life is flowing. My idea of love was, okay, so what's funny is when you live in a situation, you don't realize it's broken and toxic until you have a moment to say, oh man, my family this is not normal. And I had a moment where I realized my family was normal. My father was a pastor when I was growing up, and I think that there wasn't a day that I didn't experience arguing. It was a lot of arguments, and I think that my sister and I always wanted to get out. We didn't know why in our heads at the time because we were so young, but we always wanted to not be there,
Mhm.
subconsciously. And
Mhm.
I just think that we gravitated towards our imagination of Disney, or whatever, so literally, if you're not built on a firm foundation of love initially,
Mhm.
anybody, I think, sometimes that may come in at the moment where you are in that weak moment will just sweep
Right.
your feet.
Sure.
Even if you think it might be love, but maybe it's just something that you're running to at the time
Mhm.
in those moments.
Yeah, I think for us who get married early in our lives, there are a lot of reasons why we do that.
Yeah.
But it seems like in some ways we're piecing together ideas about what love is, what love sounds like, what love feels like, what love is, what love isn't, right? And in marriage, you're hit with realities,
Right.
right? This ain't the movies. This ain't.
No one cares about what you feel right now. What are you
Yeah, I mean
doing right
the
now in
the
this
the
moment?
right, the
You wash
whimsy.
dishes? Have you
Yeah,
laundry? Did we resolve our last argument? Are you happy?
absolutely. And so for me, when I remember, was um, her headscarf. Go
I have
ahead.
a few of those.
Totally took all of the romance out for me. I was not prepared for
Wait, okay.
the
So
realities.
your mom wear headscarves?
She did not.
Really?
No, she didn't. She, my mom is Cherokee, has a lot of Native American in her blood, so her hair is, you
That's a
know.
real thing now. That's a real thing. Can you deal with the headscarves at night?
I was not prepared. I felt like I am going to bed with a cancer patient, and I don't know how to. And it wasn't her fault. Like, I mean, it just was what it was. But I was like, this,
Adapt to it though?
huh?
Did you get used to it?
I did I get used to it? Oh, I did. I didn't have a choice. I asked her, well, why don't you wait till I go to bed first? So let me go to sleep, and then you put it on. But I mean, we were kids, right? And
Right.
I
How old were
and she could say there were unattractive things about me, because I remember I had a very torn up, worn T-shirt that was very, very comfortable that I refused not to go to bed in, and she hated my T-shirt. So there were realities about living together
right?
that kind of takes all of that whimsy and romanticism and whatever fantasies we have, right? Because if we get our ideas from Disney and movies, they don't. There was never a scene I can remember in Love Jones about the headscarf or anything like that, right? And I watched the Cosby documentary
Okay.
that's on show,
I don't know if
and
I need to watch that.
huh,
I need to check that out.
it's exhausting, as well it should be. But I remember, and they were very keen on pointing how big the Cosby Show was, right? And these images of how these people talk to one another, how they talk to their kids, right? She never went to bed with a headscarf on, right? She woke up and she went to bed
But
and
that was
woke up
lies.
full
We knew
makeup,
people with
right?
headscarves. She was a black woman.
No, yeah, and so we're piecing together from all of these images about what it is, and then we get married, and like we only see what it's not.
Right.
Um, you said you get definitions of love from Corinthians 13, and your father was a pastor. How did the church shape your ideas about love, marriage, roles, identity, and all of that? How did it shape you?
Um, I I said that because that is embedded in me. but that's a good question. I feel like that flows over in how you forgive each other when you're relating to each other. Like just the understanding of your heart and making sure that even though you will be within a relationship, learning how to compromise, um, learning and understanding arguments, that even if it is not your fault, uh, or is your fault, what I mean? Love. I don't think that, I think that after a while I started separating it because I didn't know how to put it together because of how tumultuous my family was.
Mhm.
But I think that just the love of God will allow you to love someone if that's really what you are asking, in that sense.
I'm asking, did the church for you as a woman help you identify love? Did it help give you the tools you needed to sustain the loving relationship? Or did they sell us a bill of goods like the movies that Disney did?
I plead the fifth.
You did not come here to be the fifth. That's not what.
So let me separate the answer.
Mhm.
I think that obviously if it comes from God, it's all pure and all good.
I am not talking about
But
God. I'm talking about the
so
church.
right. So
Okay.
but I think that the preparation of going to church that I went to, and the preparation of from my dad as a pastor, I would say no, it did not prepare me for that.
Mhm.
Um, when I was younger, I never once heard my dad say "I love you" to my mother.
Mhm.
And I remember one time asking him, "Hey, why don't you tell mommy you love her?" And he said, "She knows I love her. I don't have to." So I can't tell you that even though I heard 1 Corinthians 13, it was never, how sometimes you are taught a lesson and then you have to apply it when you go to college. A lot of things are applied to real life. It was
Mhm.
never applied. So I don't think the two meshed very well. I think you have an understanding of what love is. Love is patient, love is kind, love is, you know, with any relationship, you have to understand how to deal with your husband or wife. Um, but I don't think that, I just feel like, if I'm very candid, I feel like I wasn't prepared to be married, and I feel like it was mishandled on both ends. As far as we were kids,
Mhm.
we were kids, and then at the end it just fell apart.
Mhm.
At the end it was toxic.
Mhm.
um, it was just really bad.
Were you ever happy?
Yes, I was
Mhm.
in love with this person. I wanted to marry this person.
Mhm.
um, I just don't think that, when I look back, and this is not to blame him per se, but then when I look back on what I would have wanted, or where, if I were in a better place, or a place where I could see and understand, you know, we were engaged. My engagement was really nice. And I wanted to wait a year, get the dress and flowers and a big wedding. We got married 6 months later because we got married 6 months later. Um, we got married 6 months later, and it was the morning we got married. It was just family and friends. I got married in a linen outfit, and that night he had a play that he went to. Can you feel the trauma?
Okay.
So when I look back, and
Mhm.
this is all in due respect, we have a very great relationship. That portion though
Mhm.
I should have never said that was okay for myself. I
Mhm.
accepted that. And because if I wanted it and if I were okay with it, then I wouldn't keep bringing it up. It was
Mhm.
not okay with me.
Mhm.
You know, who does that?
Well,
Because
James
that
DeBarge
shows the
left.
priority.
James DeBarge left Janet in the hotel room on the night they got married. So you apparently did not. Apparently, you're not the only person who's
Do you think that
experienced.
people that dated Janet was just dating the status of Janet, not the person.
Who?
Her boyfriends, whoever, Jermaine, all the.
Well, I think with James, the first marriage, we were talking about Janet. The first marriage, they were young, right? I mean, it's just, young. And I think that I think sometimes we get to a point where our homes that we're raised in drives us out. We want to be independent. We want to get out. We want life on our own terms. And sometimes we find somebody who is that out for us.
Right.
And they're out. And so let's
good.
Let's try to figure out on the back end, can we live together? Right. And I think those are the kind of things you do when you're young.
Yeah.
And you said earlier, you may alluded to this, you're young. And so when people ask me, well, what was wrong in my marriage, I was like, well, we were young. I was 22. What do you know?
Nothing.
At 22, right? And you don't know yourself, and you're trying perhaps to get to know somebody, and sometimes you're not. They're just there, and we live together. And marriage has a way of redefining you. It's a whole nother transformative space that you're evolving into. And if you don't know who you are coming into it, you become very disoriented.
But who knows who are coming into it? A lot. I met this couple that said that if you get married like in your later 30s, 40s, it's really the best time to be married. Because you have a better understanding. But I hear people say that all the time. Like, if you know what it is going into it, I don't think you're fully prepared. It's like having kids.
So I spent the majority of my 20s married. I was divorced by 27, but primarily there's this one woman in my life who dominated the majority of my 20s. I didn't, like you, when I got divorced was the first time I lived alone. Like, I had my own car, I lived alone, and all that was induced by this, and this is a true story. So when I got a divorce, I went back home, let me stack some paper and, get myself together, da, 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 da. And so one day, one night, I was going out somewhere to do something. And my mom says to me, where you going? Where you going? I said, oh, no. I can't have another woman in my life. When I'm coming back. So the next day I got an apartment. I was like, I can't. Like, I'm not. No.
Ma'am.
So I had.
Yeah, no more. I'll be home when I'm good.
When I get back, and that wasn't gonna work for her, right? So I was like, okay, I need to go. And so I went out, got an apartment the next day, had no furniture, just a sleeping bag, a pillow, a radio, and my Jabot jeans. Basically, that was like all I had in the world. And I remember, like, the first night, I'm on the floor with my sleeping bag, listening to Prince, and
of course,
I'm like, how did I get this is the craziest. What is my life like? What
isn't that crazy?
It's really amazing.
Not what you imagined as a kid. It's not what you
this is like I did not see, this was not on my bingo card that
it wasn't in that 25 game we played as kids.
No, it was not there. And yet there was something very creative. Like you said, like, you learn who you are, and you learn how strong you are, and how tenacious
you are. You learn how strong you are because you have to walk through that valley of death, which really is what it was. I had gone to see a therapist after I'd gotten divorced, and I didn't know this before, but she said that it's a death, and you have to grieve, just like
Absolutely.
when someone actually dies.
Yeah.
Have
Yeah.
processes where you have to go through the steps of, and I was like, wow, that makes sense, because I literally felt the death. And
True.
I think that for me, I felt the dying of the covenant, even though we were bitter at the end and I couldn't stand him and we hated each other. That day at the courthouse was the quickest little divorce I'd ever seen. We went in, the judge, boom, 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 we were done. And I think that night, or just following, I can't explain the feeling, but in my spirit, I felt the breaking. It was like a death. I felt it. It was very hard. And so I feel like when you do break that covenant, it is spiritual in a
Uh,
sense. You go
some some psychologists say that death is harder emotionally. Divorce is harder emotionally than the death of a spouse, right?
here.
They rationalize it as when a spouse dies, they died with the covenant intact,
Mm,
right? That we shared a bond in the life, we shared secrets, and even if you're not here, you took all of that with you,
mm,
right? You
yeah,
kept it. When you divorce, all your dreams, hopes, love, aspirations of life are now somewhere else, maybe in somebody else's bed, right? And that's very difficult for you to process.
yeah,
It perhaps has symmetry if someone you have to lay somebody in a grave somewhere, but when you let them go and now they gone off in the world and they took everything we was going to have and
right.
do 5 years from now, and all of the kids' names that we had talked about and all of that now is somewhere else, and they may be with somebody else. Like that does play havoc on your on your emotions and your psyche in a very different way
I
than
I agree. I agree. I really feel strongly because I went through the whole, like, he got remarried
Mhm.
and it didn't take him a long time. And I think that I was like, okay, well, because people are always like, well, why aren't you married? Why aren't you, I'm always getting that question. I'm still always getting that question. But I think initially when he first got married, um, I was just like, man, it's so easy they say it's easier for men to just go off and get married. My dad got remarried. My mom is not. I'm gonna get married again. I ain't gonna be not married. Let me just put that pin in there. But I've seen it twice. At, at the end of the day, I didn't. I think that when we got divorced, there was no. I I wasn't trying to go back, so it wasn't like that. But when he got remarried, it created a whole new set of challenges. Because here's another woman in my son's life. I would have been okay if I never had to see them again. Y'all can live your life. I'll live my life, figure out how to live, whatever. But now this created a whole new set of challenges. There's another woman so I had to go through that. How do I deal with that? Because one time we were at school and he wrote down on the application, Christian's bonus mom. I was like, bonus mom? He don't have no bonus mom. I'm his mama. Take that off. I clearly, listen, I went through that. And one of my friends was like, oh, I'm a bonus mom. I was like, oh, that's a thing. I was like, oh, let me eat this crow pie. I was like, bonus mom.
Mhm.
What?
Mhm.
Heck
Mhm.
no. I'm
Mhm.
his mother. He only needs
Absolutely.
one mother. Okay.
Absolutely.
She
Yes.
Miss Smith. You call her Miss Smith. I was very obviously dealing with that. That was like a crash. That was like another set of insecurities of like, dang, worrying about if my son is going to love someone more than me. But then
Mhm.
I came to a place where I understood that in this situation of it being broken and we have multiple families, I had to come to a place of understanding, if they love him when he's with them, I'm okay with it. Because I learned through my son that he knew who I was still and loved me for that role. So within this broken situation, everyone has a role. It's just important for you to stay in that role. Now, when we first started this whole, you the daddy, you stepmama, I'm the mama. It was all getting a little entwined. So clarity had to be made with all of us. We all had to understand, like, I understand that you guys have a house and a family and you have this here, but you have to understand that this is my son, and also this is his son. I have to be included in decisions first when it comes to my son.
Sure.
Y'all don't need to make decisions about my child and then tell me later, like, you know what I'm saying? Like I'm the babysitter.
Yeah.
No, ma'am.
We can't have that.
We cannot. You understand? That's immediately how the Black woman rises up. Like, excuse me? I'm sorry. What did you do? No. You call me, so that had to be understood. And I think that even every role, my role, his father's wife, everyone had to understand, because it's not a standard. It's not like, oh, it's a family. I'm the dad, I'm the mom. We have 2 kids together. It's different. So now it has to be defined.
Sure. Yeah.
And the things that I think hurt me the most is how hurt my son was, because he went through the whole thing with us. And I think that my biggest regret was putting that, because I had to watch him cry, ask, why don't we, are you going to get back with daddy? Or why aren't we going to daddy's house? Or why did y'all get, and one time I went in his room and he had our picture on his chest and he was bawling like a baby. And the only thing I could do was hold him, because I couldn't change the situation. Yeah. So he went through that with us, and that was painful. And I had to learn. I came to a decision to say every issue that his father and I had to put it to the side and say, I wanted to create a family environment for my son.
I want to go back to something you said, because I don't think that's something we talk about often enough publicly, is how do we deal when our exes move on, right? It's one thing that we don't talk about, how to break up as healthily as possible, right? But it's another thing, on another space, to be in where your ex-spouse, or even your ex-partner, girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever, you break up and then they move on and they get married, and it seemingly like somebody else has the life that you all talked about. When my ex-wife got remarried, I had feelings about it, but it wasn't what I thought. I surprised myself, because when she got remarried, or when I found out she was getting married, number one, I was pissed that she didn't tell me. Like, you could have said something. I mean, okay, fine. Second thing was, I felt relieved. I really felt happy for her, right? Because we had talked very early on about the life we wanted to do. And I'm the kind of person like, well, if I cared about you, I still want you to have that. Even if you can't have that with me, like, if you have found this for yourself and he can be what I could not be for you, then I'm relieved, right? That, oh, you got it, good. So I don't have to carry on my back this guilt that I'm holding your life hostage even after we're divorced. You found it, that's great. So I that's the way I felt about it. And I think my only tension with it was, and then it hit back on the way we were very inconsiderate to one another. Put yourself in my shoes. Like, if I would have gotten married, and hadn't told you, I'd have been all kind of names. You'd have been, oh Lord, I just went all kind of. You was with her when we was together, wasn't you? And all the good. I mean, it just would have been a whole nother thing.
Were you
And
guys, were you guys friends in that respect? Is that why? Because you guys don't have kids together.
no, and we're not friends. We have a goddaughter, which keeps us connected, and we're good. We're good. We're not in each other's lives.
But you were upset that she didn't at least tell you.
At the time, and this was 10, I don't know how long they've been married, 10 something years ago, perhaps, right? So maybe it was within maybe a 5-year window after we were divorced or whatever. And we had gotten to a point where, we'll text each other for birthdays, and that was growth for us because, we had a very toxic environment being married to one another. So the mere fact that we could engage lightly was fine. And when I wrote the book, Love Again, and this is me being way more considerate than I think she was ever of me, is that when I wrote Love Again before it came out, I was like, hey, let's sit down and talk. You need to read this. And I want her to read the manuscript because it wasn't just my story. It was how I experienced it. But I didn't want it to catch her and blindside her emotionally. Right. So it was like, I wrote this. Of course, you're in it. There are some things.
Book.
There are some things that we're going to keep between me and you that I didn't put in here, right? This is just, we're going to keep that between me and you, but you're in here, you're part of the story. And so I can't be selfish and take our story and share it. Like you need to know this. And so that was me being considerate.
That's true.
I felt like if I consider you, which is, this is her, if I consider you, then if you're going to move on, the least you could do is be considerate and be like, hey, I'm getting married. You shouldn't hear this from anybody else. You should hear it from me. Right.
When you said that you guys were toxic, what made your relationship toxic? Is that a loaded question?
No, we were young, right? Very much selfish, self-centered, did not know how to communicate and talk to one another. I think when you're that young, sometimes you're always fighting for power, and position, and you have all these, when I look back at it, like there was a lot of things about insecurities that you have these issues in your early 20s. At my age now, I could care less. Like there's some battles like I would never fight, whatever. Right. So our and we were horrible to each other. Like we were very very horrible to each other and for each other. And so by the time we got divorced, that was to me the most peaceable choice between us, right? That we're doing damage to one another. And I know what the church says and I know what everybody else says, but screw them and screw that. You and I have to live in this space and we're not happy with one another. And I perceive, and this is me, right? I'm like fast forwarding this in my head. Like, can we be happy together? It's like, nah. I know you, you know me. And I felt like, well, I initiated this, so I need to be the one to bring it to a peaceable end. So you could go on and you be happy, and I'm going to go and do whatever it is I'm going to do. And so that was it. And so to me, it was a perfect storm of everything young people have going on in their life, and so I'm very compassionate with those kids. They were kids, You
Yeah.
know, it's like I get it. For years I felt guilt, like, oh, I could have done this and I could have done that and I should have said this and I should have done that. Ultimately, there was nothing really that could be done. It was ultimately going to end the way it was going to end. And I think she's gone on and did everything that she wanted to do and has everything that she said she wanted. And so I felt like holding you up from that would have delayed your own happiness, right? And I grew up in a very strict Pentecostal environment where we worship marriage so much that we didn't care about the people in the marriage,
Mm.
right? And I had seen just as a kid them push people to stay together. You know, God hates divorce, but she was coming to church with black eyes, and he was coming to church with scratches on his face. And I remember one time where she never came back. I mean, we had her funeral, right? Um,
Jesus.
I, I was like, you know what? I think God maybe hates divorce, but I think he loves the people in this horrible situation more. And so God's bigger than all of us, and God will deal. He'll God God will work through it. And so
It's like
going
Pharisees within the Christian life. We only looked at, it's like, how dare you do things on the Sabbath? And Jesus was like, but there's a donkey. It's stuck in here. Are you not going to help it out? Where we became so making all these rules and this is what you need to do that we were ignoring the love that Jesus was, like how we curse at someone like Mary Magdalene and look at her in a certain way, but Jesus was there to save her. We are those people trying to stone her.
Yeah, and I begin to see how selfish the church is, right? Because of course you want marriages.
Right.
It helps undergird the foundation of the church. If you have marriages, they have children, and they're here, it creates community. It makes the churches um, broader, bigger. Yeah, and I understand what the church gets out of it. And so they push this one doctrine
Right.
of, leading everybody in the marriage. And I would dare say to you, everybody should not be married. That's just my opinion. I have
Do
met
you
people.
think that everyone should not be married because they need to be taught how to be married beforehand, or everyone just doesn't have the capability to be in a relationship like that?
Everybody doesn't have the capacity to meet what marriage demands of you,
Mm, that's
right?
that's
And you can love someone, get married, and find out you can't live with them. Like, they are horrible people to live with. Loving, that's one thing. But this person should not live.
with anyone.
You need to live by yourself. And you only find out what you know when you find out when you know it.
True.
Right? And then you're like, well, if I would have known this before, I wouldn't have.
Ever.
But I didn't know it, right? Because the church is so preoccupied with what we do with our bodies that they don't really teach us what to do with our hearts, or how
Mm,
to live with our hearts, and then how to live with my heart with somebody else, even when they're breaking it every day, right? And so
and
I
I
think.
and I and not to interrupt you, but I saw that part
Mhm.
because I think as a child I tried to figure out how is it that you guys are pastors, right? But my dad, I would wake up to my dad praying in the living room every morning,
Mhm.
speaking in tongues. He was excellent at that. He was always studying. To me, my dad is an excellent teacher of the word. Excellent.
Mhm.
Um, but they slept in different rooms and they were always arguing, never happy together.
Mhm.
Wasn't arguing that they were just arguing. It was just that she slept there, he slept here, he went to church when he wanted to, blah, blah, blah. It was just awful.
Mhm.
So I understand that. I didn't know. I think obviously when you're younger, you don't realize that that's going on, and that you have to figure out, well, isn't this what Jesus, So I get that, how it's easy for us to ignore
True.
family, to go just Bible study, church, and that's more important. And
And
God is important, and God is essential in all of our lives. I think it's just the tradition of the church services and what you do in church that became more important than the relationship. And
but I know why though.
why?
I've observed why all these years in my relationship with the church is that home is a very complicated space, right? And if you're a pastor,
Mm,
um, at home, you're dealing with, an unruly, maybe disrespectful spouse as the kids are out of control. You got bills, you got pressures, you got stresses, you got all these things. When you go to church, sometimes it is the only place where people honor you,
right.
respect you, affirm you, speak kindly to you.
Carry your
And
body, carry
yeah,
your
and those are things that you can't find at home. And so I think that is why some pastors are so addicted to the space of the church, because it is feeling and meeting a need that they can't find at home. Now, to this end, home is always going to be complicated, right? It's always going to be messy. It's always going to be um, a ball of emotions that you have to live through. But what I've understood is that church is not the space for you to affirm or to feel some whole, because then it becomes codependent.
mm,
They can't live without you, and then you can't live without them. And I've observed pastors, bishops who stay on the road preaching, evangelizing 5, 6 days out the week so they don't have to go home. And whoever at that home don't want them at home. Stay, you go, so we all can get some sleep and everybody can have some peace. You stay and keep doing that. And it becomes this, it functions.
do you think
It,
it do you think it's possible to have a successful relationship where, if a woman understands the role that you both are walking in as pastors, and making sure that both people understand themselves separately as husband and wife outside of their role as pastors, and that they nurture that first, or
yeah,
individually, and then they are also have I mean, I know that they meld at times.
yeah. So this is my theory. First of all, I don't put all of that responsibility on her to understand his role. He has to understand her role in his life outside of the church,
Right,
right?
for
And so
both.
I think that church complicates marriage because you're adding another layer of responsibility, stress, accountability, that if you was a dentist you wouldn't have. Like, you go into your job, come home, and it'd be simple. Like, adding ministry on top of a marriage is a very, very complicated environment. um
Pastors just should not be married.
well, here's what I would
Catholic
say.
Church, the priests.
Well, I mean, that's a theory, right? I mean, they have this idea
Theory.
that you function better with singularity, and to understand that Christ was our single savior,
Mm,
right? That's their idea. Well, they have this idea that he could give himself wholly over to ministry because he didn't have the distraction of
right. But then
that.
what about your human desires and wants?
Well, I don't think they've worked that part out yet. I think
Okay.
I still think they got some knots in the like, it's not a foolproof.
It's not a foolproof, but it's
No, no,
definitely.
it's not. Yeah, yeah, as presently constructed. They haven't
I
made
think
away.
it's possible. You just have to be mature enough for both people to come into it with that understanding. Because churches,
I never wanted to be a pastor and be married at the same time.
were you ever a pastor during those times?
No,
When did you so how long have you been a pastor?
it'll be 17 years this year.
Really?
Yeah.
So, do you want to be married with now that you are a pastor?
I do want to be married again. Um, there was only one time in my life where I was seeing someone and I was like, oh, we could do this together. And okay, I could see us how we could do it together. But I came into it thinking it's either ministry or it's marriage because I understand how demanding
Right.
church is,
Both.
right? And then I came into it like after divorce, like I want to be with somebody. And if I'm running here and there, if this is all consuming, then how can I spend time with you? And then what about kids? Like, are you just gonna have them or are you actually gonna raise them? Like, are you gonna, are you gonna be vested in their life or you just gonna give them off to the wife and for her to be mother and you hit the road and you build this? It was like for me,
Right.
and I had seen it in a lot of different contexts, and I observed, like, I don't
I don't.
know if this is the best environment
Yeah.
to really connect with somebody, right? Um, and so for me, it was like either or. Either I'm gonna do this or I'm gonna not. The problem is that I've dated, and this is just that happens on two levels. Number one, I dated while I was married and she liked me.
Oh, you were dating your wife.
No, no. So after my divorce,
Oh, wow. Okay.
I'm pastoring
Okay.
and I'm dating, right? I dated somebody and she liked me, but she loved the idea of being a first lady, whatever that idea was. Like she had hats and she ready, like she
I
I was okay. I was like, you all right, but I could do this like with my eyes closed. Then you date somebody who's really into you. They don't want to go to church every Sunday. Like they ain't trying to like, they not trying to. I mean, they love Jesus, but they
all
ain't
that
trying to they ain't trying to do all of that.
trying to be
And so
first lady, none of that.
yeah, they and perhaps they're not even built out to do all of that because that's a whole different skill set. And so over time, there was this resentment that I had with the church because I felt like if I was doing anything else, it would have been easier for me to.
Do you think it's easier for pastors to operate because the Bible talks about it and because there isn't a specific role out in the Bible that talks about the first lady or the woman that's married to the pastors? Or do we just kind of go with husband, love your wives kind of thing? Like, do you
I
think
think it's easier because the Bible is steeped in patriarchy, and it gives the man all the power
that?
to to come and go or to be vested in his work with the idea that what I do for you. And so we can justify my
Right.
calling is all consuming. Um, and you get whatever you get left from me is what you get from me. And there are women who are willing to make that commitment. Like I'll take whatever you can give me. But for me,
But you
after
that in the end. You had
yeah, after my divorce, I was like, well, I'm not going to get married if I can't be in it. Like I'm not doing this. I'm not going to let the church pressure me into getting married. Like
right.
I'm not doing that. I'm not getting married for appearances. I'm not getting married because, and I've had prophets and bishops prophesy, you're gonna get married. I'm like, that's all you got? Like that's all from heaven. All of heaven now is just all about me.
Get married.
Do you have anything else? Because if it was up to them, like I prophesied, I should have been married 5 years ago, right? Like it was like, oh, you're gonna be married by the end of the year. Like, really?
Know
Well,
that. How it don't take that. I gotta know the person. Like
what? Like, and so I understand, and I saw how manipulative the church can be for single people because it pressures them into
Yeah.
coupling with one another,
Because if
right?
you think about it, and I'm not judging them, even when we look back, some of the pastors or people that were issuing prophecies were also having problems themselves in relationships. So it wasn't a hit on them specifically, but to say it wasn't that they were talking about being in a healthy relationship. It's just like God wants you're gonna be married. This is,
And then I had resentment against some of them, right? Because I saw how condemning they were to marry people from the pulpit, right?
right.
Like I saw them come down really, really hard on divorced people until they get a divorce, right? And so now your theology changes and there's grace, but it's only because now you going through it, right? And even when you were condemning people about divorce, you was on your second or third marriage. Like I was like, I hate it here. Like, wait, this is like
That's why I think, I've been in church all my life, so I understand that cloud of like trying to understand life outside of what people have shown you, where you do have realistically, you do go through these moments of questions like, why am I doing this? Am I doing this because I was told to do this, or am I doing this because I know that God is real? And I had to learn God for myself through those questions and through those times. Um, I could go through a bitter period of the church and stuff like that. And back to your question about, when you see your spouse remarried and happy and doing everything, I did go through a moment where I felt like it was unfair. I would say, I felt like it was unfair. I was like, you know, all the hell that I went through right now, and this is what's going on. It felt unfair for a while for me. So those were the emotions that I went through, and I think that kind of just dealing with. I was talking to a friend yesterday, and she was like, I do all this good, but then all this bad stuff keeps happening to me. And I see people that are doing bad, but all this good stuff is happening to me. And I had to get to a place where it's like, I have to stop doing good so good can happen. I had to do good because that was who I am.
right,
You
right.
know, so it's like I had to relearn love for my own self within just being a person
Yeah.
outside of what we were taught.
You do have to rebuild that for yourself after divorce. Like,
But see, here's the thing, I'm an emotional person, and you had said earlier, like, how do we know what love is? Because how do we relate to love? What until we get married, and then the real life happens, and you're like, well, what is all of this? Like for me, it was all in like, oh, I love you. Let's just spend time together. Oh my God, and then you have to deal with what really is like. So I'm dating now in my 40s, and I feel so late to the party. I feel like I don't know anything. And like learning different personalities of people, and learning that people are actually different, and not shying away because they're different. And just, it makes me feel slow sometimes. And, learning that people's lives are totally different than mine, like that's okay. It's just, and then trying to understand, learn love in the sense of uh what is the word, loving myself, showing people how to love me based on how I consider myself, and what, so there's just so many different standards and how to learn how to love.
did it change how you? And we're gonna wrap this up. I got a couple of more questions left.
That's okay.
Did it change how you saw men after your divorce? Like your general idea about men?
No, I don't think it did. It changed my idea about my ex-husband.
Mhm.
um I think I had gone through a period of, I was trying to process, because basically for our marriage, it it dwindled because we grew apart in different locations. He was always on the road and I was home, and we grew up separately. We got married at 23. He grew up on the road. I grew up at home. And one day it all combusted. He came home and he was just angry. And that, it took me a while to kind of process what was happening. And I just think that to me, he became a different person. I did not lose an idea for men. I don't think I think that now it's funny how when we grow up, we see things differently. Like, when I think about my ex-husband, I'm fine. I don't need to be with him in that sense. So I am not turned away from men, but I was like, get married again? I don't.
Right.
It took me a while to say, sure, I would get married again with the right person. I'm not against it, but if I'm very honest, I do have some fear about it. Someone asked me and I paused. And usually when you know what you want, you immediately say yes or no. But when someone asked me about it, I was like, oh. And I think it was that deep, dark, when you go through a divorce, you feel that failure in a relationship, the major relationship you had failed. So it's like, ooh, can I do it again and do it successfully? So that thought is really what's kind of daunting as well, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, no, if somebody asked me, I get this question a lot, well, why aren't you married? And when I think about it, and I look over my history since my divorce, it was really about courage. It was about fear, right? That when love was on the table, I was afraid because I knew what could happen, right? You don't want to go through that again. So it's kind of like you have this idea of failure in the back of your head, and I don't want to make you sad. I love you. I don't want to put you in a situation that could hurt you, and then I don't want to be hurt again. So I'm protecting myself and I'm protecting you, and ultimately that leaves us both alone, right? And somebody moves on, and so ultimately I always go back to what Maya says, right? That the highest virtue of all virtues is courage, because without courage we can do nothing consistent, right? And so if I am courageous enough, I can love, right? But I can't love if I'm not courageous. And I think, after divorce, it takes some confidence away. It takes your wind away a little bit. It's kind of like, oh, let me get this together. And when you care about somebody, you want them to be happy. You start questioning, well, the first one wasn't really happy with me. Because it's not.
Do you feel like it's you?
No, not necessarily. But here's the thing: when you process it at this point, it's like you're not a kid anymore. I don't have any fairy tales, right? Like, this is who I am. This is what this is. And if somebody has never been married before, they're coming with their
fairy tale.
Right. And I'm like, I don't know if I can live. I want to be that for you, but I know the reality of the fact that I may have a t-shirt that you hate, or you may have.
That you would go into a relationship that's possibly going into marriage, that you would on purpose have the conversations about how you are when you are living with someone, and what
Oh my goodness gracious, it would have to be, the issues for me has not been, can we love each other, but can we live with each other and still like each other? Right? Because for me, what that means to me, marriage means to me, is you're the person I want around when I don't have anything to do. And I want you here with me doing nothing. Right? That's love.
How do you resolve that, Patrick? How do you resolve that?
Like, that's what love is. Well, like, if I don't have to be anywhere, I don't have to do anything, and I want you here with me doing nothing. To me, that's love, right? Because it's not about all of the romantic thing, and it has its
Right.
place. I'm saying it doesn't, but marriages ain't all. We ain't going to Italy every weekend, right? We're gonna spend a lot of downtime,
Right.
and so
In this house.
right. So do I like you enough not to be annoyed because you're breathing in the same room with me, and I
You
don't have anything to do?
you know what's funny? The other day I was sitting, I was like, man, just the basic stuff, like
Right.
introducing sleeping and like I don't like how you sleep or
Man,
breathing or how I'm eating. Do you know when you like how they eat, how
no.
they lounge, what they you know what I mean? Like you have to get used
How
to
they cut their steak. Like I saw was with somebody and they were what are you doing?
how old was
It's
what's happening?
the small those kinds of things, right? Um
You know, when I first got married, my husband, I remember it was his shock that you talk about the scarf thing. His thing was like he was so surprised. He was like, "Your hair's everywhere,"
hi,
and I
what
was, I don't understand what the big deal is. And like literally, I was blown away.
are
He
you
was
a
like,
wolf? Are
"Your
you
hair
shedding or something? What are
here."
you? See, that's the stuff they don't talk about, like in premarital counseling. Like, so
No, they don't. And
I'm
like, if
living
you
with
snore,
a werewolf that
so
sheds
you have to
every other.
sleep outside. If you
Yeah.
snore, I don't know, because my dad snores, and
Mhm.
I I I told my dad, I said, listen, if I can hear you snoring when I come visit you, I'm going to get a hotel room.
Look, and how do you? I mean, do you have the like? Do you sleep with a fan on? Like, how cold does it have to be? Or how warm does it have to be? Like, all of those things. That's living together, right? Um, and those things can get very, very. Okay, we have to close this because she has. That's a sign. She has T-Mobile, and um, we gotta, we gotta go. So I'll quit. I'll quit. She's gonna come back in and we'll say goodbye to her. Okay, so I hope you all have enjoyed this conversation that we've uh, we've had together on this episode of Love Again. We got some great guests coming up. Um, T-Mobile. No, it's fine. I mean, it is just is what it is.
Someone tried to call. I think when someone tries to call and then it kicks my audio out and then I
Mm-hmm.
can't hear you.
Yeah, you got an Android.
I have an iPhone.
Okay. No, that's a fair question. I'm just
And,
asking.
no, and you know what? You talk about Android, iPhone. Like when if someone's trying to talk to me and they have an Android, I go, I don't know.
Can't. So, okay, let's do this. Let's wrap this up. We're gonna wrap it up. I have questions, like some rapid fire questions,
Okay.
and so it's fine. And I've changed the questions, so you're the first person who gets the new questions.
Ooh.
So you should
I have to
feel.
be careful because George is watching and it'll probably be featured on the podcast if I make a mess of myself.
Guys, let's do that. Do you believe in heaven?
Yes.
Okay. Um, what do you know about love now that you didn't know then?
That I have to fight for it. And I have to be very intentional about my love. Um, and that it's not all about how I feel. Um, I think that that's the most thing that I've learned from it.
Next question. Um, what makes a good lover?
In what sense? I'm sorry. Say what now?
In any sense, like
What makes a good lover? Connection.
mhm.
I think for me, it's hard to be in that state of mind without having that full connection with someone. I think that we are more willing to give ourselves to someone that we feel we have a very soul, our minds and our souls and our hearts are connected with that person intimately. And I think that that transcends into having a good lover.
So that's more of an answer to what is good love. That's connection. I'm saying, what are the characteristics of a good lover?
A good lover. I'm sorry. Break it down to me like a 4-year-old.
No, it could be it could be as far as someone who is attentive, someone who is sensitive, someone who can use their words.
So you're using the word lover because people use the word lover in different ways.
But I think in all of the ways, and I think this question is important, right? Because we think love, when we say lover, we think physically,
Right.
But
A good
someone has to be able to love you. Like a lover is not regulated to just sex and sexuality, right? So what makes a good lover? Is it a person
Gotcha.
who understands your emotional moods? Is it someone who is affirming to you, someone who feels safe to you? Like what is a good lover to
A
you?
good lover would be what you said, someone that
Use my
understands.
answers. No, you can't.
No, a good lover to me would be someone that is attentive to how I love or how I receive love, which would be physical touch of just like a shoulder sitting next to me, like I literally need a body right there. Like I literally lean, just someone that's sensitive to um, moments. Even if you don't understand what's going on, which I don't expect you to read minds, but being open to hearing where I am, being open to understanding, even if you don't understand or can be sympathetic, but you can, or you can't empathize, but you can be sympathetic. A good lover would be someone that wants to be in tuned with me, even if they don't know how to, but they try to. So I think that that is important, um, for both people to be in that space of wanting to please each other in a relationship.
Okay. See, that wasn't
I had to understand what you were saying. You see, this is
okay.
this is a sort of relationship where you have to understand what that person is and be open to explain. Because
Yeah,
I know you
I
have
get it.
your wires a little short. The fuses are short.
Next question. Where do
Okay.
you find joy?
Where do I find joy?
Mhm.
I find joy in my accomplishments. And if I'm truthful, I do find joy find joy in my son and when he's accomplishing things. Um, I find joy in just the things that I like to do. But it does get me excited when I think about loving someone, if I'm being very honest. Um, but now I find joy in just things that put me in a very good zone. So, but I think fulfilling purpose for me is my top tier. When I'm accomplishing things, when I'm being very efficient, when I'm doing things that I get happy in those moments when I feel like I'm making forward movements in my life.
Okay. That's good. That's great. Last question. Um, what has changed about yourself during COVID?
I have more masks.
Good for you.
Man, that's a loaded question. I have the realization of certain things I thought I needed, I didn't. But then the understanding and the balance to create, understand how your journey should go once you get rid of certain things. And how important people are in your life. I connect with my family now more than I did before. So that's one of the things I've learned from COVID. And more masks.
Very, very important. Thank you for hanging out with me. This was awesome.
For having me.
This is awesome. So you're a content creator. Please tell everybody where we can find your content and all of your wonderful, adorable videos that you have out there and on Al Gore's interweb.
Al Gore's. You can find me on Facebook, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and it's all the same thing. JODEEVIDS, Jody Vids, and you can find me on all the platforms there.
Of course, we can. No. Get into her content. She's hilarious, funny, insightful, thoughtful, all those things. Thank you for coming to hang out with me. I appreciate it. You got to come back.
Yes.
One day, come back. All right. Thank you, everybody, for being with us. Appreciate it. See you next week for another great episode of Love Again Podcast. All right. See you later. Bye-bye.
Bye.